This section is about inequalities, and here we're introducing set notation and interval notation. So you might remember from Algebra 1 that we used inequality notation right here. So for this inequality on the number line, it represents h is greater than 5, but h is less than or equal to 10. So there's a closed dot at 10 because it includes 10, and there's an open dot at 5 because it doesn't include it. So this set notation, you're going to put in brackets, and it's h such that, and now you're going to put the inequality notation inside this set notation. This is set notation. So we're talking about the variable h. There's a bar right here, and then you write the inequality notation, but you put that in between sets. So here's how I make the sets. So that's what these outside ones look like. And interval notation is new too. So interval notation at the end can either have a parentheses or a bracket. So if there is parentheses, it means it does not include the number. So 5 is not included, just like it's not included in the open dot, just like it's not included in the inequality notation. But 10 is included, so you're going to use a bracket. So let's look for one that has an infinity. So this is h is less than 10. The set notation is h such that h is less than 10. And so now all the numbers that are included in this interval go all the way back to negative infinity. Since infinity, I'll write the symbol for infinity, it's the sideways 8. Since infinity is not really a definitive number, that's why we have a parentheses. So negative infinity is going to have a parentheses. 10 is going to have the parentheses because it doesn't include it. And I'm looking at this one right here is kind of, this was wrong on this chart. This should be a closed dot at 10. So maybe that graph was just wrong. Closed dot at 10. So h is at least 10. It's h such that h is at least 10. And we're including 10, so we're putting a bracket. And infinity, again, is going to have a parentheses because it's not a definitive number. So an open dot means the number is not included. And then the closed dot means the number is included. And with inequalities, don't forget that you change the sense or direction of the inequality when you're multiplying or dividing by a negative. So the reason that we do that is if you put these numbers in order from, these numbers right here are in order from least to greatest. So I could put these inequality symbols in between them. However, if I multiply the numbers by a negative, we'll just do -1, you're going to have 2, 1, 0, -1. I can no longer put these inequalities this way. That wouldn't make sense. 1 is not greater than 2, 0 is not greater than 1, so that's why you have to flip the inequality when you multiply or divide by a negative. So solving inequalities work just the same way as solving an equation, except for you have to be careful about changing the sense of the inequality, and you can put your answers in set notation, interval notation, and there's a graph to it. So in this case, I'm going to look at all these fractions, and I'm going to multiply both sides by the least common multiple of the denominators in order to clear fractions. So I have a 3, 4, and 12, so I'm going to multiply everything through by 12. So 12 times 5 12, so it's just going to be 5 because the 12s cancel out. 12 times 1 divided by 4 is 3. And this term, 12 divided by 3 is 4 times 2 is 8. So it's a much simpler inequality. So 8x greater than 8, x greater than 1. So set notation is going to be brackets. I'm talking about the variable x, bar, and then I'm going to use the inequality notation. Close the set. Interval notation. So this is all real numbers that are greater than 1. So the endpoint on the left-hand side is 1. It doesn't include 1, so I'm going to do a parentheses. And this goes all the way to infinity, sideways 8. And infinity is not a set number, so it's a bracket, or so it's a parentheses. So let's look at this one. I'm going to solve the inequality, do the distributive property, combine like terms, add 8 to each side, divide both sides by 10, okay, but remember I'm divided by a negative right here, and this also reduced. I reduced 12/10, so that means that this, this means that this changed. That's why I changed the direction of the inequality. So in set notation, I'm going to draw a graph of this first. So I have a closed dot at 6/5, all real numbers to the right with an arrow. Set notation would be bracket x such that x greater than or equal to 6/5. Close the bracket. Interval notation is on the left-hand side, the first number that pops up is 6/5. So I'm going to put a bracket because it includes it, comma, it goes all the way to infinity, and infinity has parentheses. So more with inequalities, you can have a no solution inequality and an all real number solution inequality. So I'm going to distribute on this side. 3 times 1/6 is 1/2. Now what I have is I have the exact same thing on the right and left hand side. So I'd subtract 3x, add 1/2, and you'd have 0 is less than or equal to 0. So is 0 less than or equal to 0? Yes, it's true. So this is going to be all real numbers. This statement is always true. On the other hand, you can have over here negative 7x plus 12 greater than negative 7x plus 20. These cancel out. 12 greater than 20. That is false, so that's going to be no real solution. And number 3, a salesperson earns salary of $7 a month plus 25% of the sales he makes. If the salesperson wants to make at least $1,000 and less than $1,500 for tax purposes, write and solve an inequality to calculate the sales. So in this case, we have 2 endpoints of our inequality. This is a compound inequality. We're trying to make between at least includes it, less than 1,500 doesn't include it. So I'm trying to calculate the sales. X is going to be the sales. So the sales are going to be what I'm going to make is going to be 700 plus 25% of the sales. So it's 0.25 times the sales. So this compound inequality is an in-between. So what you're going to do to solve for x is you have to subtract 700 from the 3 sides. 300 less than 0.25x less than 800. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 0.25, which is the same thing as multiplying by 4, because this is actually 1/4, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. So my sales need to be at least $1,200 but less than $1,600 in sales. And number 4, graph and write in a solution and write in interval notation. So I'm gonna solve it and then I'll write my solution. I solved it, and then now I'm going to show you, So if you have set notation, you're talking about the variable x such that. Now I want to have inequalities, so I'm going to do x greater than 6, x less than 6. You could also put, set notation could be x such that x does not equal 6, because if it's x is greater than 6 and less than 6, it's all real numbers except for those that are equal to 6. And then my interval notation is going to be two parts. So my interval notation is, we're going from negative infinity, oops, I'm going to erase that. We're going to from negative infinity to 6, not including 6, and then we're also going from 6 to infinity. So I'm going to solve the next one, and then I'll explain it. So I solved it. Now in this situation, I can do x such that, I can just write my inequality. The solution ends up being at least negative 15 but less than negative 2. So that's what set notation looks like. My interval notation is the left-hand bound is going to be a bracket because it includes negative 15, and the right-hand side doesn't. So interval notation can be real shorthand. Okay, and last one. The plans for a circular plastic part require the diameter to be a width within 0.2 of 1.5 inches. So within 0.2 is we want it to be, it can be more than 1.2, and it can be 0.2 more than 1.5 and 0.2 less than 1.5. So if I'm going to write this as an inequality, so if yours was the largest length, the greatest length of the diameter could be 1.7, within means it includes it, and the least it could be would be 1.3 because I subtract 0.2. So the machinist finds the diameter should read is 1.73 inches. By how much should the machinist decrease the diameter? So we know that we need to be within these dimensions. So this means I need to decrease it by 0.03 inches.